Welcome back to Leadership Unfiltered. In the last episode, I mentioned a framework that I created, and I wanted to just dive deeper because I think it can help a lot of leaders. It's something that I don't think is talked about enough. And one of the questions I did get was that people want to know what CORE stands for. And if you haven't already checked out my website, I'm just excited to share that with you and how it's different than other leadership frameworks. Because I really do feel like it ties together just a lot of my experience, and it's something that I wish I had known sooner. Most leadership frameworks are built by people who studied leadership from the outside. They observed, they researched, maybe they even ran some focus groups. Maybe they built some models, and that work does have real value, but that's not what I did when I made my framework. I built CORE from the inside perspective, what my experiences as a leader and working with leaders really over the last decade. And what I saw was just missing. No matter the company, no matter the workplace, every team that I talked to or worked with had the same gaps. Leaders were genuinely caring about their teams and they wanted to lead well. They had been through training and taken classes, but still they didn't have the language for what was actually happening in the room. Not the performance review version of what was happening, exceeding goals, meeting KPIs, but what was actually happening. A manager becoming increasingly controlling and short-tempered, not because they were a bad leader, but because they had been operating without a single real boundary for 18 months. And they were one thing away from completely shutting down. Or maybe it was a high performer who was just quiet in meetings, which was very uncharacteristic. And they are not disengaged. Some that I've heard from, they're quiet because they were just diagnosed with a health condition and they don't know how to bring it up with their manager. They're worried that it's going to impact their promotion or even their job altogether. And these are not edge cases. These are your teams. Every week, they're living real life. Something's happening. And CORE is a framework that I built to give leaders a practical, grounded structure for these situations. C is for courageous conversations. It really is the entry point, the practice of naming what is actually real in your team, in your culture, in yourself. Instead of managing the surface while the actual real life compounds underneath. Most organizations are highly skilled at the professional version of things, but courageous conversations are about the true version of what's actually happening. O is for overcoming the invisible load, the recognition that every person in the room is carrying something that you don't see on a resume, you don't see it on a performance review, and it is building conditions. And it might look like building conditions where the load of real life does not have to be invisible. And it also is not a wellness initiative. It is a leadership strategy. R is for reclaiming your boundaries. The personal work of understanding what you actually need in order to lead with integrity and communicating that clearly before you burn out, before you start making decisions from a place of depletion rather than clarity. E is evolving through aligned action. It's a systematic step where the personal work becomes structural, where you look at the gap between what you say that you value and what your team actually experiences. It's the policies, the norms, the decisions you make under pressure, and you start closing that gap. Just 4 simple steps built from real experience and designed for leaders who are done pretending that what happens in people's lives outside of the workplace does not show up in it. Over the next few episodes, I do want to go into each step more, and I'm going to show you what each step looks like in practice. in the specific moments that are the hardest to navigate and that most leadership training really skips entirely. I'm Kimberly Perez, and thanks for joining me on this episode of Leadership Unfiltered.